Foreclosures are exploding across America, and the people falling first aren't the poor, they're the middle and upper class. Nearly 1 million homeowners are already behind on payments as layoffs sweep through tech, retail, finance, and manufacturing. Credit delinquencies have surged to levels not seen since right before the 2008 crash. This isn't speculation. It's happening now, in real time, beneath a housing market that looks stable on the surface but is cracking beneath the weight of debt, inflation, and collapsing job security. The next great housing shock has already begun, and almost nobody is prepared. CTA, like, share, subscribe. It starts quietly. Foreclosures never explode overnight, they drip, then they flood. And right now, the drip is becoming a roar. In the last 6 months alone, filings have jumped 5.8%, and by August, the year-over-year surge hit 18%. That's not a fluctuation. That's momentum. Nearly 1 million homeowners are now officially behind, and millions more are barely holding on with temporary extensions, forbearance programs, or simply ignoring the warning letters piling up on their kitchen counters. The most dangerous part. Prices are creating the perfect. They make the market look strong, stable, even unstoppable. But high prices during a foreclosure surge are not a sign of strength, they're a sign of stress. They tell us that demand hasn't collapsed yet, but the financial foundation underneath the market absolutely has. Homeowners aren't defaulting because their homes lost value. They're defaulting because the carrying cost finally exceeded their ability to survive it. This is exactly what we saw in early 2007, not late 2008. In 2008, prices collapsed. In 2007, pressure built quietly while the headlines still looked optimistic. Back then, experts said the same thing they're saying now: the market is cooling, but it's fundamentally healthy. And just like 2007, foreclosures today are signaling the beginning of a credit unwind, not the end. Foreclosures are the first domino of a larger system cracking. When filings rise, banks start tightening lending. When banks tighten, refinancing dries up. When refinancing dries up, distressed homeowners lose their last lifeline. Eventually, liquidity disappears, buyers evaporate, and prices finally begin to reflect the panic underneath. A foreclosure spike doesn't predict falling prices, it causes them. And every metric we have says the surge is already here. If the foreclosure surge is the smoke, the real fire is the credit system beneath the housing market, and it's already burning. The National Affordability Index has crashed to 94.4, one of the lowest readings in modern history, meaning the average family can no longer reasonably afford the average home. The gap between median home price and median household income has never been wider, creating a structural imbalance that no simple interest rate tweak can solve. Even after multiple Fed moves, mortgage rates are still hovering around 6.3%, refusing to fall. And when rates don't fall, payments don't fall. That means millions of households are locked into a cost burden that increases every time groceries, insurance, utilities, or taxes rise even a little. Affordability isn't just weak, it's broken. But the most alarming signal is coming from a different corner: credit cards. Delinquencies have climbed to 7.18%, the exact level where deterioration began in 2008, just before the mortgage defaults cascaded into a full-scale crisis. The relationship isn't random. Credit card delinquencies always spike 6 to 9 months before mortgage delinquencies explode, because when households run out of cash, they stop paying unsecured debt first. Right now, millions of Americans are doing something even more dangerous: using credit cards to pay their mortgages. That's the financial equivalent of siphoning gas from your spare tank while your engine is already on fire. Eventually, predictably, the spare tank runs dry. And when that moment hits, the mortgage payment collapses next. This is why the real crisis isn't visible yet. It's hiding in the floorboards, in the silent buildup of unsecured debt, in the families juggling bills with plastic, in the National Affordability Index screaming that the system is unbalanced. When credit cracks, the housing market always follows. And those cracks are no longer theoretical. They're already here. Florida is no longer just a housing market, it's the warning label for the entire nation. 1 in every 267 homes in the state is now in foreclosure, the highest rate in America. But here's the crucial part: these aren't bad loans, subprime loans, or speculative loans. These are good loans, middle-class families, retirees, long-time owners, being crushed by forces no mortgage underwriter could have predicted. The biggest blow is the insurance crisis, a runaway disaster that is pricing people out of their homes even if they never miss a payment. Insurance premiums have jumped 25% year over year, with some households seeing increases of 60 to 100%. It's not optional. If you have a mortgage, you must keep coverage. If you can't, the lender places a policy 3 times more expensive. And suddenly, a perfectly healthy mortgage becomes a financial grenade. Then came the post-Surfside collapse reforms. Condo buildings across the state now face massive mandatory inspections and special assessments, often reaching tens of thousands of dollars per unit. For many aging buildings, repairs cost millions, and owners are being billed directly. Retirees living on fixed incomes are being asked to pay $40,000, $80,000, even $120,000 to stay in homes they've lived in for decades. Many simply can't. Add to that property taxes, some of the fastest rising in the country, swelling alongside inflated home values. What used to be a manageable bill has become another monthly burden, pushing families toward default. Florida's boom, endless migration, rapid construction, soaring demand, has become its greatest vulnerability. Rapid growth masked the underlying fragility, a market built on sky-high insurance, aging infrastructure, and costs rising faster than wages or savings. Now, the state's unraveling is exposing the brutal truth: you don't need subprime loans for a housing crisis. You just need homeowners whose expenses exceed their income. Florida is showing the nation what happens when good loans fail, and why its breakdown is the future preview nobody wanted to see. What's happening in Florida isn't isolated, it's spreading across the country like stress fractures radiating from an earthquake. Alaska has seen a 55% surge in foreclosures. Rhode Island is at 51%, and Wyoming is close behind at 46%. 3 completely different economies. 3 different geographies. One identical pattern: rising costs crushing stable households. That's the signal of a systemic problem. This isn't a regional recession, an oil market shock, or a coastal bubble. It's a nationwide affordability and credit breakdown hitting states with nothing in common except the pressure they can no longer absorb. What makes this even more complicated is that every state has a different foreclosure timeline. Wyoming takes about 125 days to move from default to auction. Louisiana takes an almost unbelievable 3,612 days. That means some states reveal stress immediately, while others bury it for years. National foreclosure totals appear low not because the crisis is small, but because the slow states haven't surfaced their numbers yet. To see the real story, you have to look at the hotspots, local markets where stress can't hide. Lakeland, Florida. Columbia, South Carolina. Atlantic City, New Jersey. Cities where the affordability crisis, rising insurance costs, stagnant wages, and credit dependency collide. These places act as early warning seismic sensors. When they start flashing red, the rest of the country usually follows. And the numbers aren't just rising, they're accelerating. That acceleration is the metric that matters. Housing crises don't start when foreclosures are high, they start when the growth rate becomes uncontrollable. The velocity always comes first. This is how systemic unraveling begins, quietly, spreading fast, showing up in places most people never watch. A factory town here, a coastal city there. A rural county struggling with taxes. A suburban market suddenly flooded with listings. No single headline screams crisis, but the map is already filling with cracks. And once those cracks connect, the entire foundation starts to shift. For decades, America believed one comforting lie: white-collar jobs were safe. Tech was untouchable. Corporate work was stable. Professional salaries were immune to the economic storms that hit blue-collar workers first. But that myth is gone. The layoff wave has shattered it. Intel cutting 24,000 jobs. Microsoft slashing 15,000. Amazon dropping 14,000. Meta and Google carving out thousands more. These aren't failing startups, they're the pillars of America's innovation economy. And when white-collar incomes collapse, the impact hits the housing market from the top down, not the bottom up. In every major housing downturn, subprime defaults came first. But this time, the early cracks are appearing in high-income markets: Seattle, Austin, San Jose, cities where mortgages aren't $1,200 a month, but $4,000, $5,000, even $7,000. When income vanishes in those places, a single default drains liquidity from entire neighborhoods. Prime borrowers, the gold standard homeowners, are disappearing. Not because they're irresponsible, but because their salaries can no longer absorb record insurance premiums, rising taxes, huge car payments, student loans, and the slow bleed of inflation. Banks see the pressure and tighten lending instantly. That freezes refinancing and pushes already strained households closer to the edge. This is the invisible avalanche. One engineer loses a job, defaults on a home, forces a comparable sale down, triggers lower appraisals for the whole street, and suddenly a suburb built on six-figure incomes can't sustain itself. The domino effect spreads from tech hubs into their commuter belts: Bellevue, Round Rock, Mountain View, Redmond. Housing bubbles don't just burst from the bottom, they implode from the top when the people who were supposed to be safest fall first. This time, the professional class is signaling the downturn, and when that tear breaks, it hits harder, faster, and deeper than any blue-collar collapse ever could. Beneath the layoffs, beneath the foreclosures, beneath the strained budgets, there's a deeper force pulling the housing market downward: debt. Household debt has hit a staggering $18.04 trillion, the highest in American history. Credit card debt alone has climbed to $1.21 trillion, with average APRs now above 22%, a suffocating rate that turns every purchase into a compounding financial trap. And unlike previous decades, Americans aren't using credit for vacations, gadgets, or luxuries. They're using it for survival: groceries, utilities, medical bills, school supplies. Millions are using cards to bridge the gap between income and cost of living, creating a dangerous illusion of stability that evaporates the moment their credit limits shrink. Meanwhile, the lock-in effect is holding the housing market hostage. Over 60% of homeowners have mortgage rates under 4%. They can't move, can't downsize, can't relocate, because doing so would instantly double or triple their payments. This traps inventory, freezes the market, and creates an environment where prices stay high even while the financial foundation decays. Banks see the late payments rising. They see the credit utilization rates maxing out. And their response is predictable: cut credit lines, tighten approval standards, and pull back on lending. Every reduction in credit shrinks household liquidity. Every liquidity shrink pushes another borrower toward delinquency. Every delinquency pushes the system further down the spiral. Inflation is still heavy despite Fed cuts. Groceries, insurance, property taxes, childcare, all rising faster than wages. Even if the Fed cut rates tomorrow, it wouldn't solve the insurance crisis, the tax burden, or the structural affordability collapse. And stimulus checks? They would vanish into past due balances the moment they arrived. This isn't a cycle you can fix with simple monetary tools. This is a compounding debt spiral, one that pulls the housing market down inch by inch until the breaking point is impossible to hide. People keep saying, this can't be another 2008. And they're right. It isn't 2008. It's worse, and far more complex. In 2008, the crisis grew from toxic loans, subprime mortgages, fraudulent underwriting, teaser rates, and adjustable time bombs. Back then, people defaulted because the loans themselves were junk. But in 2025, it's not the loans that are toxic, it's the cost of living wrapped around them. These are good loans, prime borrowers, stable incomes, paired with impossible costs: insurance premiums exploding, property taxes climbing, condo assessments doubling budgets, and wages that haven't kept pace with any of it. Borrowers are failing not because they were irresponsible, but because the financial gravity pulling on them has become too heavy to bear. Housing equity is high, yes, but equity isn't cash. You can't pay insurance bills with equity. You can't cover rising taxes with equity. And when rates are high, selling your home comes with a new mortgage you can't afford. Equity becomes a locked vault instead of a lifeline. Meanwhile, first-time buyers have fallen to just 24% of the market, one of the lowest levels ever recorded. The median buyer age has jumped to 38, a historic shift that signals a generation priced out before they even begin. Without young buyers at the bottom, the entire ladder starts collapsing from the base. Layer in climate risks, disappearing insurance carriers, wildfire zones losing coverage, storm-prone states facing annual premium spikes, pressures that didn't exist in 2008, and the structural instability becomes obvious. The most unsettling part? Every collapse begins not with the vulnerable but with the optimistic, the people stretching to buy, the families moving for opportunity, the professionals upgrading into bigger homes. When they start defaulting, the rest of the system follows. This isn't 2008. It's a crisis built from entirely different ingredients, and the result will be deeper, slower, and far harder to reverse. Every market breakdown creates a window, small, quiet, and often invisible until it's too late. Today's housing collapse is no different. While most people see fear, a smaller group sees the same pattern. Institutional investors have already moved on, undervalued assets, forced sales, and distressed properties going for the kind of discounts that only appear once every decade. Foreclosures are now selling 20 to 40% below market, with deeper cuts in the hardest hit regions, where discounts reach 50 to 60%. These aren't beaten down, unlivable homes. Many are structurally sound properties owned by middle-class families who simply couldn't keep up with taxes, insurance, or debt. REO inventory, bank-owned homes taken back after failed auctions, has surged past 36,655, rising quarter after quarter. The states leading the surge, California, Illinois, Pennsylvania, Michigan, Texas, aren't fringe markets. They're some of the largest housing ecosystems in the nation, meaning the opportunity isn't niche. It's broad, deep, and growing. Institutional investors know what this means. They're already buying quietly, before headlines turn the public's attention. They always move early, during the panic phase, when average buyers freeze. And they target the exact category producing the biggest returns, sub-$225,000 properties, currently generating 46.4% margins for those willing to renovate and resell. Even fix and flip projects at higher price points are showing an average profit of $70,250, with a national ROI of 28.7%, numbers that only appear in downturn conditions when distressed sellers outnumber qualified buyers. Early movers don't wait for the bottom. They position themselves while inventory rises, competition falls, and financing becomes more flexible for those with cash or strong credit. They buy in markets others fear. They focus on structurally sound homes with cosmetic issues. They watch REO lists, auction calendars, and tax-delinquent rolls. The collapse will hurt millions, but it will also create the greatest transfer of real estate opportunity since the last housing crisis. The question is always the same: who sees it early, and who waits until the window has already closed? If you want to understand what happens next, you have to understand the sequence. Housing crashes don't arrive as a single event, they unfold like a chain reaction. First comes credit stress. That's already here: maxed out cards, shrinking limits, rising delinquencies. Then come the late payments and missed balances, which spread from unsecured debt into auto loans, student loans, and finally mortgages. As households fall behind, businesses lose revenue, and the next link emerges: layoffs. Once layoffs hit critical levels, foreclosure filings spike, and the final stage begins: the price correction. Prices always fall 6 to 12 months after the foreclosure surge. That's because panic takes time. Inventory builds slowly. Sellers resist reality at first. But eventually the weight becomes impossible to ignore, and prices adjust downward, sometimes gradually, sometimes suddenly. The 2025 to 2026 correction will unfold in 3 phases. Phase 1, the silent stress period we are in now, where numbers deteriorate but optimism remains. Phase 2, the visible crack, where layoffs rise, foreclosures jump, and headlines start to shift. Phase 3, the liquidity freeze, when credit tightens, buyers disappear, and prices correct sharply across the regions most exposed. Which markets are most at risk? High insurance states, overheated tech hubs, boomtown suburbs, and aging condo cities. Which recover first? Stable job markets with diversified economies, strong rental demand, and younger populations ready to buy once prices reset. Preparing now isn't panic, it's survival. Protect your job by increasing irreplaceable skills. Protect your credit by reducing utilization and avoiding new debt. Protect your equity by understanding your home's true financial position, not the fantasy price on a listing website. For investors, this is the blueprint: conserve cash, build liquidity, track REO lists, target undervalued properties, and buy before the rebound, not after. This collapse is survivable. but survival belongs to those who move early, adapt fast, and understand the cycle before the shock hits. Like, share, subscribe, and stay ahead of the storm.